Welcome to Conversation with Zaki Baruti, with your host, Zaki Baruti. And like always, I want to give a shout out to my biological family. What's going on? To the Universal African Peoples Organization family, what's going on? And to New Life Evangelists in the family headed by Reverend Rice. Keep up the great work. And a shout out to our amazing cameraman, Bob. On that note, we're going to have another great show because in studio with me is one of a foremost educator in our community, activist in our community, a person who wants to bring about revolutionary change in our community, and who's the chairman of the African Peoples Socialist Party, as well as the Black is Back Coalition. And I'm speaking none other than Omali Yeshitela. Welcome again, sir.
Thank you so much. It's good to be with you, Brother Zaki.
Okay, now as I start the shows out, and I know you've been on the show a number of times, but just as a reminder to people, would you provide a little background information about yourself?
Well, in October, I'll be 84.
84 years old. Wow. Okay.
And but for most of my life, I've been involved in the struggle for the freedom of our people. I was fortunate to have been born at a time in history where the world was undergoing great changes. Peoples around the world were fighting against colonial domination, that is, white power dominated the entire world, and people everywhere were fighting to try to change our conditions and to be free. I joined early on the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that was known as SNCC. It was at the time when there were prominent people like Stokely Carmichael, who came to be known as Kwame Ture, H. Rap Brown, were important figures in that organization, but there were lots of others whose name many people are not familiar with. And this SNCC was a critical...
Let me interject. Mm-hmm. So was SNCC, so you were in college at that time? Because there was
No, it was Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, but I joined SNCC. I created the first membership-based SNCC organization in this country, and I did that not as a student, but as somebody who was engaged on the ground trying to change situations in St. Petersburg, Florida. And the organization that were most prominent at that time, that people were conscious of, aware of, were like the NAACP, the Congress of Racial Equality, even the Urban League had some significance with Whitney, not Houston, but Young, and SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was a really important kind of organization. And it grabbed the attention of young people. And it grabbed the attention of young people because it was an organization based in young people and who were very, very, very courageous. They were different from the NAACP. And I forgot to mention the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, that was headed by Dr. Martin Luther King. And SNCC was different in that it would go into some of the most oppressed and dangerous locations, especially throughout the South, organizing African people on the ground. And it would stay in places where SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and others would not stay. They would come in, SCLC, and they would hold a big rally at the church, and then they would raise some money and then get out of town. But SNCC actually went in and lived with the people. These were young people, courageous people who lived with the people, and we characterized them as that bridge in our movement from the struggle for anti-racism, struggle for civil rights, to the anti-colonial struggle for Black Power. It was SNCC who put forth the slogan Black Power. And at that moment when they talked about Black Power, it put the struggle of African people in this country on par with the struggles of peoples in Vietnam and other places who were trying to end white colonial domination, weren't trying to find a place in it, but to try to end it so that they assume responsibility for the control of our own lives. And so SNCC was like that, and it was very, very, very exciting. And it was the organization, by the way, that in Lowndes County, Alabama, created the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, and then put as its symbol the Black Panther. It was called the Black Panther Party because of that, because it was running elections in Lowndes County, Alabama, majority African county. So we're going to capture our own power. We were double-crossed by the Democratic Party in 1964 at the 1964 convention. And so we went along with Fannie Lou Hamer. She walked out. We walked. The SNCC walked out. And then SNCC went into Lowndes County, Alabama, created the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the Black Panther Party. That's the thing that created the image and the political development from civil rights to even the emergence of the Black Panther Party under the leadership of Huey P. Newton.
And that was during the turbulent times of decades of the 60s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One last question on that, the background. Was there one particular event in your life that guided you into the movement?
I don't think so. I think that I was fortunate enough to be born into an era where you couldn't go into a home in the African community where we weren't engaged, where people were not engaged in what we call race talk. I mean, I was the same age as Emmett Till when he was killed. I saw the picture that Jet magazine had. His mother, as you know, wouldn't allow them to close the casket in Chicago where he was buried, and that had an impact on me. But I grew up at this time where race talk, as we characterize every community, you couldn't go into a house where we weren't dealing with this question. So I can't think of a particular incident that moved me toward the movement. I can say that I left high school in part. My senior year, I quit high school in part because of a confrontation I had with a teacher there. Who had made the statement in class that black people would have to prove ourselves to white people before we could be free.
Wow.
And so I had a real struggle with that, but I couldn't.
That was a white teacher?
That was the black teacher. Black teacher, yeah. Yeah, but that was a thought. That was how people perceived things at that time, yeah.
Well, you took me back to an incident with a person of color as a principal. But I'll share that on the other side of the break. We got to make a quick break.
Just drive downtown St. Louis, drive by City Hall, and you'll see, what do they do? For a year now, a fence is all the way around City Hall and neighboring parks to keep the homeless people out. You talk about a visible enlightenment as to NIMBY and how it exists. Just take a look at St. Louis City Hall. Not in my backyard is what they're saying, but they're not alone. So many other people are saying, not in my backyard when it comes to the hurting and the homeless. So where are they going to go? What are they going to do? We haven't seen a single new shelter open in the city of St. Louis for 15 years due to something called plat and petition. And it's not just the city of St. Louis, it's St. Louis County, Jefferson County, Franklin County, Madison County, St. Clair County in Illinois. What are they doing? They want to ship their homeless to St. Louis. That's wrong. We have to see each county taking care of their own homeless people. And that's why we may have to file a lawsuit in the near future against Jefferson County and St. Charles County and St. Louis County to take care of their own homeless according to Missouri state law and start shipping it everywhere else. Well, in the meantime, we need your help here at New Life Evangelistic Center. We receive no city, state, or federal dollars. Our teams are out every day among the poorest of the poor. They don't need our excuses. They need direct help. We are having to distribute hundreds and hundreds of sandwiches, hundreds and hundreds of bottles of water. We urgently need water. You can bring it to 806 North Jefferson in Springfield or 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. There are so many hurting people. Yes, in Springfield, we get 150, 200 homeless people a day, and most of them sleep outside. So we have to distribute tents and sleeping bags, and long underwear, and gloves, and socks, and hats. Why don't you have a drive at your church and help us at this time? Further information, call us at 1-800-334-3276 or 314-421-3020. That's 314-421-3020. Go to the website at nlecstl.org, and your tax-deductible gifts are urgently needed now. It's New Life Evangelistic Center, P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri. That's 63166.
New Life Evangelistic Center has an event that you're not going to want to miss. On April 5th, at the beautiful Creve Coeur Memorial Park, we are going to be hosting our 3rd annual Walk for the Homeless. We are going to walk so the homeless can ride. Public transportation is a big barrier for men and women who are experiencing homelessness. And it's so important that we raise the funds necessary to provide bus tickets to get them from place to place. And the reality is, without these bus tickets, it makes it very difficult for the disabled, the hurting, and the homeless. But with these bus tickets, they can get to caseworkers, they can get into housing, they can get to the jobs, and really help break the cycle of homelessness. Register today at newlifeevangelisticcenter.org/events or call 314-421-3020. Don't wait.
Welcome back to Conversation with Zaki Baruti. In studio with me is longtime revolutionary activist, Brother Omali Yeshitela, who's chairman of the African Peoples Socialist Party. On the other side of the break, I just had to comment, when I said that must have been a white teacher, you threw me off, but you took me back to an incident I had as an educator teacher in East St. Louis where a person of color, a very dark-skinned brother, ordered me to take down a bulletin board during Black History Month because it didn't have no pictures of white people on it. Mentality.
Yeah.
What kind of mentality? This is off the subject.
Yeah.
Just address that mentality.
Well, I think that this was a period of extreme struggle. And we were struggling, and most of the educated African people had accepted the definition of freedom that had been handed down in their education and teaching. Remember, when I was young, the two great leaders that were recognized in great schools of thought in our community was that from W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. And W.E. Du Bois had a position that African people had to integrate with the white people, and Booker T. Washington was saying, cast down your bucket where you are. And that is to say, we should get skills and capacity to take care of ourselves and things like that. And that, they were both more or less on the same line in the sense that Booker T. Washington saw that as a way of winning, a place in the white world. But Garvey was influenced by Washington. Booker T. Washington
Right.
came here looking for Booker T. Washington.
Right.
But he took what Washington was talking about to a higher level and talked about having our own, government, our own capacity to govern. So those were, and the teachers that I had were very much influenced by Du Bois. Integrate, and the way you win it is to get acceptance approval by white people and things like that. Remember, Du Bois was the...
I'm sorry, I had to...
And Du Bois was an extraordinarily educated guy. He had been studied in Berlin, Germany, but his whole thing about the talented 10th, that the educated 10% of the black community should be the ones who get to, with the approval of white power, to govern the rest of us. So that was Du Bois, and that was the way the most educated liberal black people thought at the time. So it was not unusual what the professor said. I was unusual by saying no. That's not the way we should do that. Yeah.
Okay then. So on that note, though. And I would encourage people to do their diligent study of each of those philosophers.
Yes.
Activists, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and especially the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Now, fast forward, and you and the organization, the African Peoples Socialist Party, had recently been under attack by the federal government. Can you, because time is rolling, can you briefly share what had happened and the outcome and how you see it?
On July 29th, 2022, I was awakened, my wife and I were awakened at home by a loudspeaker saying that everybody in this house come out with your hands up and hands empty. This is the FBI. And first I thought it was a hurricane warning or something. It was, tornado warning. What is this? So finally I got it because these explosions started going off too. They were using these grenades, flashbang grenades, in the neighborhood and around the house and even in the back stairwell of the house. And so I told my wife, you wait, let me go down first and call people and let them know that the FBI is attacking the house. And so when I went downstairs, I was greeted by this military force that call themselves the FBI. They were armored vehicles in front of my house. They had these military attired forces that had assault weapons mounted with laser targeting devices, and these red dots were hitting me in the chest as I went down the stairs and ran into these people. And then I was commanded to come outside, and they zip tied me behind my back. My wife, when she exited the house, she was nearly hit in the face by a drone that they sent up into the house. And at the same time, these flashbang grenades are going off. They had actually commandeered the neighborhood that we lived in. You were there, Comrade Zaki. I really appreciate that because shortly after it happened, you and the Universal African Peoples Organization were on my front porch with me where we were condemning that attack. So we were attacked, and I'm asking what's going on. And finally, they told me that that later that morning there was going to be an indictment of a Russian national in Russia, and that my name was in the indictment, and that they were there with a search warrant for my house, and even though they couldn't produce the search warrant, they occupied my house while I was handcuffed. I was zip tied. They handcuffed my wife. They took our cell phones. They went into the house and stayed in there for hours. They took things like laptops and iPads and any kind of devices that could record things, etc. They were on the porch of the people next door. They had put tape over the doorbell video, so there would be no record from that perspective of what happened to us. So we get downstairs, and so that's what we're told. And I learned later, within the minutes after that they had attacked this was on Redbud, by the way,
right,
in St. Louis. And as you know,
in the heart of the city.
Yeah. And so that they went to the center, Solidarity Center we have in South St. Louis on Gravois. And they attacked that place. They used battering rams, knocked down doors. They went up to the upstairs apartment and put the couple living upstairs at gunpoint, a man and his wife, at gunpoint, and searched the place, occupied the place. And they did the same thing to Penny Hess, who is the chairwoman of the African Peoples Solidarity Committee. So they went to all those places, and then at the same time, they went to attack our office in St. Petersburg, Florida. They took our radio station temporarily off the air. They had the St. Petersburg Police Department.
Wait a minute, hold your thought on that. We have to take a quick break.
Okay, surely.
To hear and experience all the things that individuals are doing on Zaki's program like this is such an encouragement. But it's not something we just want to sit back. We're not just spectators. We're right out there in the middle of it all if we've experienced the power of the resurrection, the reality that Christ is risen. Over 500 people saw him after he rose from the dead. Yes, and it drives us, it motivates us, it encourages us that we're more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens us. We can often see these overwhelming problems. We can see what's going on by the president in Washington, D.C. We can see the hurt, we can see the pain, we can see the destruction. But we know that Jesus rose from the dead. And because of that reality, you and I can also rise up in the midst of all these needs, and we can make a difference. People end up hungry one at a time. We can feed them one at a time. They end up homeless one at a time. We can help them one at a time. For truly, we can be more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens us. That's the good message. That is the good news that is given to each and every one of us, that we have hope. As many as call upon the name of the Lord, they shall be called the children of God. As we believe that Jesus paid for our sins on that cross and he rose from the dead and he's sending us among the hurting and the homeless and the needy, we can make a big difference, encouraging so many that are broken in our community. Let's let the light and love of Christ shine in us and through us at this time. Let's bring hope to the hopeless, help to the helpless, and let's bring God's love to everyone we meet. For truly this can be the greatest day of our life if we'll let his light and love flow in us and through us at this very critical time in the midst of so much need all around us.
Welcome back to Conversation with Zaki Baruti. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
That's right,
so they attacked your offices in St. Louis as well as St. Petersburg. Okay, and then what happened?
Well, they had the St. Petersburg Police Department, because the St. Louis, by the way, Police Department was with them. And the St. Petersburg Police Department were with, they called the house of the sister who leads our work in St. Petersburg, Florida. And you've met her, Carmen Akile Anai, and they told her that her car was being broken in and that she needs to come out and check up on her car. So when she came outside, FBI agents came from everywhere, and they cuffed her, and at the same time, they were at our Uhura House in St. Petersburg, Florida. They knocked down doors. I think they knocked down every door in the building, and it's a much larger building than the one we have here in St. Louis. And they took all kinds of records, financial records. They took devices, etc. So they did all of that stuff. And 9 months later, but they didn't arrest anybody. 9 months later, they declared that they indicted. We were characterized as unindicted co-conspirators with a Russian man, Ionov, in Moscow. 9 months later, they indicted us. We had to go into Tampa, Florida, because that's where the indictment was, the federal court was. And me, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville, who is leader of the one aspect of the Solidarity Front of our movement. And they fingerprinted me, they handcuffed me, they put me in leg irons and handcuffs and mugshot me, etc. And then indicated that I was being indicted for being a Russian agent. That the work that we did.
So how many indictments did they return against you?
They returned 2 indictments. One as a Russian agent, and the other one conspiring to be a Russian agent.
And that trial took place in?
And the trial took place in September
of last year.
Of last year, and so the jury came back and said that we were.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. So you had 2 charges. What were the 2 charges?
One being a Russian agent without notifying the Attorney General of the United States that I was working for the Russians. And 2, with conspiring to work for the Russians without telling the Attorney General that I was conspiring to work for the Russians.
Okay, then. And what was the jury composition?
It was white. I mean, they mostly white. I mean, there was, I think, an Asian who was there.
Not one black juror?
The one black juror that they had, they kicked her off the jury later in the trial because she was late coming back, from lunch or coming back the next day, et cetera. So they kicked her off the jury.
So in terms of what was the outcome then of the jury? I mean, it looked like normally facing that kind of composition of the jury, we know what usually happens, in terms of if black people are in front of a jury like that, charged with some serious charges, what could have been the penalties for if you were found guilty?
Found guilty, we could have each been sentenced to 15 years in prison, the combined charges, and $250,000 fine. That's what we were facing when we went there. Now,
you had an unusual defense strategy. And what was your defense strategy?
Well, our basic strategy was to put the state on trial, that we have not committed any offense, that the First Amendment, the whole Bill of Rights, gave us the right to free speech. We didn't commit any crime. The only thing we did was talk. And every charge that they talked about overt acts that constituted the crime. One of them was that we ran for office. People ran for office in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2017 and 2019 on reparations demand, on a reparations ballot and what have you. So that was one of the things. I went to Moscow in 2015, went to Moscow twice. And so to talk to Russians and everybody I could meet within the world to end the isolation of our movement, to win support for black people here. So.
Okay, on that note, we got to take another break.
Behind me is the New Life Evangelistic Center administrative offices in Overland, Missouri. And this is where we shoot our shows for our worship shows and the Here's Help Network. It's also where Zaki Baruti and Bernie Hayes shoot their shows. You can find all of these shows at the New Life Evangelistic Center app, the NLEC TV app. You can also access them on your tablet or on your computer. And this is how you can stay up to date with all the things that New Life Evangelistic Center is doing. There are so many different programs that we've got going on, and God is doing many exciting things through partners like you. So if you want to support the work that New Life is doing, then please access and give through the app. You can go online at nlecstl.org or give us a call at 314-421-3020. Again, 314-421-3020. But this is the best way to get plugged into the amazing work that New Life is doing through people like you. And so there is something for you to get involved in today. And we are so thankful for our partners. Only through the grace of God and your gift are we able to bless others today.
The empty cross changes everything. The fear of death, death has been swallowed up in victory. You and I are more than conquerors through the resurrected Christ. Let the message of Easter transform your life this year. Be fully persuaded when it comes to the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. You're going to know in the depths of your soul the reality of Romans chapter 8, verse 35 to 39, where it says, "Who can separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? No, in all these things we're more than conquerors through Him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." Be fully persuaded. Know that you're more than a conqueror. Whatever life may be throwing at you this particular moment, fall on your knees. Surrender to Jesus. Let His power flow in you, and let the message of Easter be yours both now and for all eternity.
Welcome back to Conversation with Zaki Baruti. We want to have a couple more minutes with Brother Omali Yeshitela. Now, you had all that backdrop. You had the jury that supposed to have a jury of your peers. But were they your peers?
Not my peers.
Not your peers. So now we have dramatic time. The jury comes in to make to do the verdict. What's the verdict?
The verdict is not guilty of being a Russian agent.
Not guilty.
Not guilty of being a Russian agent. You were there, Zaki.
Yes, yes.
But we were guilty of thinking about being a Russian agent. So we were guilty of conspiring to do something that didn't happen. So that was punishable by 5 years. And so the judge came back and he said, look, that nobody's going to jail. Nobody's paying any fines or anything like that. And he said, if we charge you with a fine, you're just going to raise the money and pay it anyway.
Yeah, that was a exact quote. Okay, go ahead.
And he said that he had said prior to that everything that we're talking about could be considered speech, free speech, if it were not for the issue of having registered as a foreign agent. But how could you register for a foreign agent as a foreign agent if you didn't know that was a requirement? So how can he said I have a problem with this charge because I don't see how somebody can be convicted of knowingly functioning as a Russian agent without notifying the Attorney General if there was no requirement that the person knew that this was the law. And the jury was not required to rule on whether or not the person knew that he was supposed to register. So he said no time. But the government spent tens of millions of dollars over the time frame that they used. When they attacked our house in St. Petersburg and other places, they used scores of FBI agents, and they had to pay for all of that.
So why, real quick, because time is running out, why do you think they attacked you?
I think they attacked for one reason because of the work we were doing with the electoral process. I think we violated what was supposed to be done with the elections. We were not even supposed to have the right to do it, but when we did it, we took it places that they didn't appreciate.
Okay, on that note, I appreciate you being here, but we're going to do a part two because originally we're here to talk about the Electoral School that's going to be taking place. So we'll do that under part two. I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
And like I always tell everybody to know the issues. Go and vote, but know the issues. Also, join an organization that speaks truth to power and has a track record. We say join the Universal African Peoples Organization. Omali say join the African Peoples Socialist Party, but join somebody. On that note, may God bless each and every one of you.